Welcome back after a long hiatus. Not for them, but for us, I guess, because it's been over a month since we last recorded.
We've gone longer.
Yeah, well, I suppose we have. You know, while Beth was gestating. This time we watched Season 8, Episode 2. Let me check my notes. This time we watched Season 8, Episode 22, Overdrawn at the Memory Bank.
The one in which you go to the PBS station and they put you inside the computer and Raul Julia's there and it's weird.
Mm-hmm. But first, we have some follow-up in the forms of fan letters.
That's right. A couple episodes ago, I don't remember when, but I was talking about writing in fan letters to TV shows. I guess we both were. But I was telling my side of the story, and it turns out that I got it entirely wrong because I said I'd written in to Night After Night with Alan Havey, weeknights on Comedy Central in the 90s.
Check local listings.
And then I said I'd never written anything afterwards. But in fact, that is not true because I, of course, eventually wrote in to Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Woo.
Because at some point I got on the internet early in the 90s. And when I went to the Usenet group, ask your parents, as if any of our listeners are that young.
Provided your parents' names are Deja News.
But I went on the Usenet group for MST3K, and I found out that if you wrote in to that MST3K Information Club, P.O. Box, yada, 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 Hopkins, Minnesota, 3-something, I don't remember. But you'd then be part of the Info News Club, and you'd get newsletters and opportunities to buy swag and so forth. And you'd get one of these.
Whoa, I hold in my hand Chris's bus pass.
Yes, because we should also say, ironically, for this virtual movie, this movie that takes place mostly in the virtual world, for once, Adam and I are sitting across from each other at a table.
Yeah, it's weird because I keep wanting to look across from me, but then I'm just staring at books in your kitchen.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm holding the Mystery Science Theater 3000 fan club letter that has Chris's name written in, as well as your member number.
Yes, which is, 4,000 something?
It's actually 43136.
There you go. That's my number. Don't use it to commit any MST3K fraud in my name.
Yes, I accidentally read out Chris's SIN number. Oops.
So yeah, I still have that piece of tatty cardboard here. It certifies that I'm an official member of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 fan club. And of course, if I had known that you get stuff by writing to them, other than potentially getting your terrible drawing held up by Joel at the end of the show, if I'd known that you get stuff, I would have written in years earlier.
Well, did you get anything with your card?
Well, I got a subscription to the newsletter. I got opportunities to, as I said, buy swag, which I then did. So I still have some of the original buttons and so forth and lapel pins. And I had a mouse pad. I had an MST3K mouse pad back when mouse pads were common.
I thought you were going to say fashionable.
They were.
They were the case.
They were quite fashionable. It's quite fashionable to have something like an MST3K mouse pad to show your allegiance to your favorite TV show or make of car or fish.
Well, wait, is that going to be like one of those ones where it's Tom Servo and he's on the mouse pad, but the mouse pad has like a little resting area that forms breasts that you can like put your hand on? Was it like that?
This did not have a resting area. That cost money. This was the cheapest, thinnest piece of poly, whatever they called that stuff, and it was just the silhouette and pointing to the moon, the classic look.
Wow. Hey, speaking of cheapest.
This is not the cheapest movie we've looked at ever.
I'm starting to doubt that.
Well, I guess we should probably get to talking about today's episode, Overdrawn at the Memory Bank.
Tonight, on your WNET sci-fi original movie, Raul Julia is caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse as he plays a down-on-his-luck computer hacker who's thrust into a different plane of reality, escapes his virtual reality prison, and overthrows the tyrannical rule of those in power. Overdrawn at the Memory Bank is to The Matrix what Big 8 is to Pepsi. It bears a superficial resemblance to what you wanted, and it only cost 50 cents. Let's interface with the plot proper, shall we? Raul Julia is down on his luck. What's eating Raul, you ask? Well, his mom. Not that she's eating him. I'm glad I wrote it this way. His mom, who looks like present-day Jessica Walter wearing Janine Melnitz's glasses, named him Aram Fingal. And if that isn't enough, Fingal works in a futuristic cubicle farm. Basically, he works at a call center, a fate worse than death. Fingal's suspended without pay for goofing off and watching Casablanca on company time. Fun fact, I was fired from a call center for disconnecting the phone line and watching episodes of MST3K on company time. This went on for a week and a half before I got caught. We are kindred spirits, Fingal. Anyhow, in this far-flung future where nearly every hallway consists of glass bricks, Fingal is sentenced to compulsory VR therapy, where he's put in the body of whatever animal he can afford. Yes, if you get in trouble at work, you're sentenced to second life prison in the fursona most suited to your price range. Fingal is put in a monkey for the weekend, and that'll teach him to take his job more seriously. Bravo. Okay, Fingal's brain is put in a VR monkey by Apollonia James. Or is it Jones? A woman who I guess went to college to learn how to do that. With Fingal's mind in Apollonia's Commodore 64, what happens to his body? Bad news. It's Captain Picard Day at the animal therapy rehab prison, and a pesky young man takes a sticker from one of the patients and sticks it on Fingal's sleeping body. More on that later. During this wacky mix-up, we see nature documentary footage narrated by Raul Julia, which doesn't sound that bad, actually. When Apollonia and the staff can't find Fingal, the corporeal Fingal, not Fingal's brain, which, to reiterate, is in a monkey right now because Fingal got bored at work, things go pear-shaped. Fingal exits the simulation and starts living out his own VR fantasies, having round-the-clock sex with a coworker he casually sexually harasses every day. After Apollonia throws a bit of a snit for using virtual reality to masturbate like he's the lawnmower man, Fingal abandons sex so he can live out his fantasy of being a Mary Sue in a Canadian community theater adaptation of Casablanca. To cut to the chase, Fingal hacks the VR system which controls the weather and the economy, so the president of the corporation that owns the whole world jumps into Fingal's Casablanca VR to hassle him and act like a second-rate Sidney Greenstreet. Fingal's body is found when unexpectedly turned up for gender confirmation surgery, and Apollonia, who is in love with Fingal now, I guess, rescues him. The end.
Meanwhile, on the satellite of love, Crows bought t-shirts. Lots and lots of t-shirts, all printed with a picture of him and his new catchphrase,
"You know you want me, baby!"
Crow encourages Mike to pick a new catchphrase, but he chooses things like, "We're all out of toner," and they fall flat. But let's interrupt our regular opening segments with a telethon. Pearl has somehow gotten the impression that PBS makes money hand over fist with their pledge drives, so she's decided to co-opt the idea. With all the awkward phrasing of a fundraising coordinator who doesn't have much on-camera experience, she exhorts us to pledge Pearl. Tom gets excited about the possibility of getting a tote bag for all his toting needs, so he calls into the phone bank using Mike's credit card. We also see a clip from The Nature of Bobo, where Brain Guy does a David Attenborough impression while Bobo eats fast food. In the next segment, inspired by the animal footage in the film, Crow and Tom order a monkey from Instant Monkeys Online. The monkey, off-screen, throws a bunch of stuff at Mike, and the bots tell him to act more submissive. He ends up patting his head and scratching his belly, and I guess he looks foolish doing it. Segment 3 has the monkeys still on the loose, so let's cut back to Pearl, who offers a clip from her musical review, Pearl, 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 Pearl. She sings Loving Lover's Love, a lovely loving love song to love. Brain Guy walks on to join her for the second half. In segment 4, the monkey has briefly gone away. Tom gets doppeled down to the nanite world in a way that doesn't really resemble how doppling works in the movie, but whatever. A version of Tom that is even smaller than the nanites ends up in a bad part of the nanite world. Some ruffians declare him a college boy. Fair enough. And they rough him up a little. Mike and Crow decide to let Tom get beat up. Oh, and then the monkey returns. We end with Bobo on the SOL trying to calm the monkey down, but only escalating matters. Mike sedates them both with a blowgun. Pearl, meanwhile, is counting the money her telethon made. Oh, Pearl, if only it were that easy.
Please give generously to the It's Just a Show Patreon.
It'sJustAShow.com/Patreon or Patreon.com/It'sJustAShow.
Every dollar counts.
Oh my God, please.
For just the price of one cup of coffee, you can keep both Chris and I off the streets.
What did you think about this episode?
It's interesting. This episode, like the riffs are very funny. The film is unbelievably cheesy, and I would say it's a qualified success in that, like for me, this episode is the origin of an opinion that I always found kind of baffling, which is a lot of people would champion riff tracks because they would say, "Hey, it's Mystery Science Theater 3000 without all those lousy sketches, and you could just enjoy the riffs." And I thought, why would you want to get rid of the sketches? That's some of my favorite moments on the show. And then you watch Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, and then like the riffs are amazing. And then every time they have to like cut back to a sketch, I wanted to die a little inside.
Oh, I mean, I certainly didn't like the monkey business. I certainly didn't like the T-shirt business. I did enjoy the public pearl stuff, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, it wasn't for me, but at least that explains to me that. But I enjoyed it, and it's such a great find because I had no idea that Raul Julia had done some public access,
Public television.
Sorry, yes, it's not public access. It's not Wayne's World. But I had completely I would have never sought this out, and
good luck if you'd wanted to.
Yeah, not even I would use my resources to try and find this. And so this obviously shed light on Overdrawn at the Memory Bank existing, and it's terrible, but it's terrible in a really enjoyable way, and they make hay out of it. And it's a film that makes a lot of strange choices. What about you?
I really enjoy the episode, some of the sketches aside. I mostly enjoy it because I love the visuals of the movie. It's so 80s chunky graphics. It's from 1981, as I recall, and it's just oh boy, I hope you like pixels, because they've got pixels and they've got weird neon colors, and they've got the fonts that haven't been seen since weather reports in the late 80s. Oh, it's fantastic for that.
I think you've just described the NTV Evening News from my hometown of St. John's, Newfoundland.
NTV may still have those graphics packages. I'm not sure.
Rest assured it does.
But yeah, I don't know. I get a kick out of that graphic design, and it's so stark. It's so like bright colors and then like weird dark backgrounds. The room where the baddies hang out, is just pitch black. It's a void except for this monitor with computer graphics in the background. It's just a visual treat. But the movie, it's a little draggy. It's a little weird. It's a little
touch convoluted.
It's definitely a bit convoluted. It's a bit tricky at times. And so I'm certainly glad to have Mike and the bots there helping me through it.
Yes. And hey, on your comments about the visuals, this is a fun movie to look at, strangely. It wears its cheapness quite proudly.
Oh, yeah.
And if that's really tickling your brain, Chris, I got to say, you would really like early 80s Doctor Who, and I would recommend that to you. It's time to hook you up and make you watch all 4 parts of The Leisure Hive.
I do like the looks of early 80s Doctor Who, but I don't really want to sit through a whole episode. I don't mind looking at stills though, or enjoying it while I walk by somebody else looking at it. But yeah, and also Doctor Who, of course, on PBS, at least in America. That's certainly where I saw it. And so it's still got that kind of feel of like those weird graphics, that flat early Next Generation lighting.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that are like weird about it. Like one, it's so much like Doctor Who of the time and Doctor Who up till at least 1985 that I could easily see someone tuning into PBS and only too late realizing that he's not tuned in to Caves of Androzani Part 3. It has this really washed out. I suspect there's Vaseline on the lens because everything is so washed out that it looks like a dream sequence half the time, and that's not even when he's in VR because the VR doppling is mostly stock footage, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Well, the first part of it,
yes, not when we get to Raul Julia's Casablanca fantasies, and it is visually kind of fun to watch. It's full of glass bricks and pinks and a lot of questionable decisions, but that's what makes it such a treat.
One of the things I think we also need to point out is that so there's a character. He's the big baddie, and he is an overweight person.
I understand he put on 50 pounds for the role.
I think he did. I think so. And of course, Mike and the bots make a lot of jokes and references making fun of his weight.
Mm-hmm.
A few of them are actually pretty good.
That's
Like,
what I would say.
in as much as they're kind of clever. Like, they don't just say, how fat? Oh, he's so fat. But like, they go an extra step. Of course, one of our favorite lines, well, something that's become a bit of a catchphrase around the house, is he's sort of in a car and he's about to drive off after telling Raul Julia off, and they quip, "To Wendy's."
To Wendy's.
Yes, I think part of it too is that it is the actor that was chosen for this role is a perfect overbearing theatrical fat guy, so it's fun to imitate him, and you'll catch that a lot in the episode. There's just a moment where he says connect, where he's trying to get into Fingal's dream world, and you can just hear Kevin Murphy literally go connect. And stuff like that is funny. And I like, as the podcast resident dumpy fat guy, I really laughed, I would say, most of the time, and wasn't particularly annoyed at other jokes there. Your mileage may vary, your smilage may vary, but I did get a big laugh out of the fact where I think it's when he first walks into, I don't think it's called Rick's Place. I think
The Place is what it's called.
The Place. No copyright intended place. and he walks in, and I think it's Kevin Murphy. It's just, take me to a delicious buffet.
Yes.
And it just made me laugh. I think the stuff is very silly and fun.
I think there's just a lot of it. Like, they go back to the joke. I think you're absolutely right. Like, the way that he acts is really big and really broad and really fun to make fun of. And also, he's sort of given nothing to work with in terms of making it clear that he's the big baddie.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, because his performance is not altered when he enters the place. So you get the impression that he was cast to be as much like Sidney Greenstreet as possible, but he's doing that kind of constantly. Like, that seems to be a matter of like poor or inconsistent direction to me. But then again, it's like, whatever direction you got out of this script, you should be grateful for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a big mistake to have the introduction of his character be his face swirling around on a flat screen that's just swirling above like a subway platform. It's not his face swirling around. It's just the sort of rectangle in early graphics going around and around.
That is kind of what I liked about it. I really felt like I had tuned in to part 2 of Colin Baker in The Twin Dilemma.
I mean, I love the visual, but I don't think it does him any favors as establishing him as a bad guy.
Probably not. With that though, they at least chose an actor who can like ham it up. And if you're going to plow through this movie, if you're going to plow through this script, hamming it up is the right way to go. Although I'm a lot of credit must be given here, while the performances are not that bad overall. There's some clunkers there, namely one Apollonia Jones, I would say. I would say that the fat man is great. I loved seeing Maury Chaykin as his henchman, but you don't really get a lot of Chaykin. You more get Chaykin bits. And Raul Julia is very sincere and great whenever he's not doing a very bad Humphrey Bogart impression.
I think you meant Shaken Nuggets.
Oh, I would have accepted that.
So this movie came about when a few public television stations decided to try to make some sci-fi things. This is the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And the final one, as far as I can tell, although there's a little debate about that. The one prior to this was The Lathe of Heaven.
Yeah.
Based on a novel by Ursula K. Le Guin, which I think both of us have read.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very enjoyable novel. I don't really remember a lot about it, but it was a very good novel. And Ursula K. Le Guin, of course, is, fantastic. By the way, you might be able to find both of these unmisted on YouTube if you look. Like, we're not going to link to them in the show notes, but you know how to find things. So it's there. I'm super curious to watch it because The Lathe of Heaven was very well reviewed as far as I understand.
Yeah, I read some of the reviews and they were almost overwhelmingly positive, save for the note that there was 20 minutes of baboon footage in there and they couldn't explain that.
Well, you got to stay true to the novel.
Yeah.
So I'm super curious to see that. There may have been a third one that they made, but I don't remember the name of it. And definitely it's not agreed whether that happened or not.
Again, that could have just been something that people thought happened because they had interfaced.
It may have gotten started and then immediately canned as soon as Overdrawn tanked. I don't know.
Yeah, if you catch the last few minutes of Overdrawn as the 2 cardboard cutouts of Raul Julia go flying through a Technicolor whirlwind, and be like, maybe we should stop making television.
So, Adam, as you may know, this movie is based on a short story by a guy named John Varley, who has had a career. I don't know much about him. He's an American guy.
Oh, didn't he play Ernest?
Yeah, exactly.
John Varley?
Now, I got my hands, my hot little hands, on a copy of Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, the short story, and I read it the other night. And I'm wondering if you could tell me what you think the plot of the story that this movie is based on. Because as you know, things get changed sometimes when they go into script writing. I don't know what the technical term for these things are. But yes, things sometimes get changed. What do you think? What do you think might be happening in the original story?
If I were to guess what the padding is and what the real meat of the story is, I assume it is this. And I'm very, very prepared to be wrong. But to me, the heart of the story is you have a guy who's wasting his days away in virtual reality and just ends up living there and ignoring real life and just going more and more into his fantasies. All that stuff about baboons, all that stuff about being an unsatisfied worker, all that stuff about hacking into the mainframe and becoming interface, all that stuff about the company trying to stop him, and all that stuff about losing his body at the brain clinic. All of that felt like filler.
Ah. What about the Casablanca bits?
See, I would assume that that's part of the story.
Well, you're wrong about that. There's no Casablanca in the story.
Oh, man.
Also, several of the things that you mentioned as being gone are in fact from it.
Damn.
It starts out with the kids doing their field trip and learning about how brains work. It basically serves as an info dump. The teacher gets a lot more lines explaining how this technology of Doppling works to the kids, who do go around and try to touch the brains, which is totally okay, because when they all left Earth...
What? Wait, what?
Yes. When a handful of people left Earth because Earth had become completely uninhabitable, they managed to sanitize everything, so they brought no germs with them. So you can touch a brain even if you've got mustard on your hands, as this kid does in the movie, because it's fine. There's no germs.
Okay.
Yeah. Some things don't hold together in this story. That was an amazing thing. But yes, they're on the moon.
No, but naturally. My question that follows from that is the line where the kid asks his teacher or whomever, is it sexy, when he finds out about brain stuff? Is that in the short story?
That is not in the short story.
Whew.
But I will tell you that one of the children is named Lupus.
Is the original short story called Night of the Lupus?
And the bit about swapping the tags is totally there. They do lose the body. That sets off the rest of the plot. And his body is sent off to the same department.
Okay. Wow.
Because there's nothing that is funnier in the late 70s than, quote unquote, sex change operations.
Right. Although that's what's funny about that. I don't know and I'm curious if the short story makes this clear, but, and I guess the kid didn't really know what he was doing. He was just taking tags and putting them on whomever. But if you were in that situation, I just can't help but think of that, where, the tag that's being taken from, wasn't that a woman? So if a man showed up to ultimately walk out of that clinic as a man, wouldn't you just see that and go, oh, my work here is done?
Yeah. Yeah. That certainly happens in the movie, and it doesn't get any further explanation than that. That part is not in the book.
Okay.
So the other thing is that he gets transferred into the body of a lioness instead of a baboon, because he does have money, because this isn't compulsory. He's having a rough time. He's getting a bit bored at work. And so his psychist, same as in the movie, suggests that he have one of these holidays. And the idea is that you have a holiday and you get to experience different things. In this case, he's a lioness and he gets to make a big kill, and it's like fills him with accomplishment and power. And then he's like, oh yeah, this is really like, this has made me feel like I can do anything, and this is really good. And the psychist was right. This is a good vacation. Like, just like you might do a sort of adventure vacation.
Yeah. It basically sounds like Total Recall.
Yeah, exactly. It is. So it makes sense in a way that in the movie, he's forced to take a vacation in the baboon's body. How is that going to help? It totally doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it really is just a case of, we had this footage and the movie is short.
Yeah. So the body is, as I said, misplaced. The cube technology works a bit differently, because the cube, it's got its personality, and then it's transferred to the lion, and then the lion is sent out to the nature park, which is an underground nature park.
So he's actually put in the body of a lion instead of essentially hologram VR nonsense.
Exactly. And when his vacation is up and they bring the lioness back, they take out the cube and then they're sort of dealing with him in the cube. And Apollonia Joachim, as she's known in this story, is dealing with that. Fair enough. But he's stuck in the cube for what is for him a year and what is actually a few hours, which is also potentially true in the movie, but it's a little less clear.
Yeah, that's never explicitly stated to my knowledge.
And he spends the time sort of doing some of the same adventures. He sleeps with the woman who he's sexually harassing at work, and the masturbatory lines are still there.
Okay.
He does say more or less the line, "Am I nuts?"
You heard it here first. It is "Am I nuts?" and not "My nuts."
But the idea is that Apollonia tries to communicate with him, but his brain doesn't know what to do with it, with the language that it's receiving. It's excess, and so it bursts into the scene that he's in weird ways that neither of them have any control over.
Wait a minute. So is the scene where Apollonia hands down rules from the Lord, the 10 Commandments, is that in the short story? Because that would make much more sense in that context.
It sure is.
Yeah.
And it totally works. It totally makes sense. It happens right after he's figured out how to hack the mainframe, so to speak. And she hands down the tablet saying, "Don't mess with what you don't understand." Which in this version, he does, because it's not an evil mega corporation.
Oh.
The whole point of it is that he's sort of spending his time, after he gets bored with work, spending his time learning how to program. And after he's done that for a while, when he starts seeing through the matrix and he's able to program reality itself and program bigger things, he does a similar thing where he hacks into the outside computers and he causes the company that's running this safari park getaway, Total Recall thing to lose a bunch of money, which they make it clear, we'll get that money back. Like, this is just a bureaucratic nightmare. Please stop doing that to us. We're really close to getting your body back. And there's no bad guy. There's no fat guy controlling things and controlling the entire world. None of that. It's just, wait. And the whole story is just how he and Apollonia will fall in love.
Okay, so it still retains one of the things from the film that's not very interesting.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point. It's like this really intense meet cute, especially because for him, they have gotten to know each other over the course of a year, even though he's never seen her. And for her, it's been like a day, but it's been a really intense day. And
what a day.
I know. So it's kind of interesting on that level. It's not like you're not convinced of it, but it's also a really interesting precursor to the idea of falling in love with somebody that you only know virtually.
Yeah, this is basically that Kate Bush song about falling in love with your computer, and you hear hello.
Exactly. Oh, also in the story, he is 68 years old.
How old is Apollonia?
Well, I want to say he's 68 years old, but they've learned that technology that shows up in some sci-fi stuff where you can live for a very long time, and also you can sort of get a recording of your body, and that if you die, that recording can be started up again. I don't know if you've encountered that before. I've seen it in a few different sci-fi things, but it allows them to live for centuries. So he's quite young at 68.
Okay. So he's not the silver fox like Victor Newman as I was picturing.
So yeah, it's a kind of an interesting short story in that it's got some interesting ideas and the writing is fine, but it has also got a lot of weird edges and very typical for this kind of science fiction short story.
Yeah. The question I have, and I don't know if you know anything about this, is whether or not John Varley's story had any kind of following, and as such, like why would they choose this to adapt it other than like it came across somebody's desk and they thought it would be interesting? Like, is there a fandom for Overdrawn at the Memory Bank?
Well, it had won some awards.
Oh, okay.
For best novelette, which is a term that, sure. I mean, it's a short story. I guess we can call that a novelette if we want to.
Well, you can't make a novelette without breaking a few novels. Now, Chris, I want you to play that song for me. The song, you know where it is.
Oh, I'd like to know where you got the notion.
I was really hoping you were going to say, "Don't Call Me Babe," which was a hit song for another movie we'll talk about.
So I believe that you were referring to the fact that this movie takes a lot of influence from Casablanca.
No. It is a bit like in the last half of the movie, it is a bit like seeing a children's production of Casablanca. In that, like, even with the talented ones, even with Raul Julia, even with the fella who plays the bad guys just doing kind of like a fourth rate Sidney Greenstreet, and Raul Julia's Humphrey Bogart leaves something to be desired.
Yeah, so we did a little experiment last night,
Mhm.
and we watched Casablanca. It was the first time I'd seen it. You'd seen it before.
Yeah, I'd seen it a couple of times.
Yeah, okay. But having seen Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, it was like, well, let's actually watch Casablanca and see how it compares.
Yes. See it the way it was meant to be seen, right after Overdrawn at the Memory Bank.
Now, were you a big fan of Casablanca?
Well, that's just it. I had watched it the way that you inevitably watch these kinds of movies when you're really into film and you come across for the millionth time one of those all-time great important movies lists. And this was just before Casablanca, this was right around the time in which I guess to date it, Orson Welles' Citizen Kane was still the number one movie, and Casablanca was sometimes fighting it for the top spot. It's before Vertigo seemed to replace it on all lists. And, enough time had gone by, no pun intended, that I'd realized, I haven't seen that. And it was playing at a repertory theater. And I thought, it's like, yeah, I'll just go and see Casablanca on a whim. And I have no preconceptions about it other than, like, I knew the catchphrases. I knew that it was World War II set, but I didn't know really anything about it. And I guess the main drive was sitting down, like, I haven't seen this movie that everyone says is great, and it's got Peter Lorre and Claude Rains and Sidney Greenstreet in it, and the more I thought about that, the more I was like, that's really appealing. So it was irresistible to me, and sure enough, I would say that the three actors I named are the best parts.
Yeah, I guess I was in more or less the same situation when I saw it last night. Like, I definitely knew some things about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was really high up on a bunch of people's lists, but for reasons that made the movie sound less appealing to me in some ways. But I did end up liking the movie well enough. But I absolutely liked those actors the best in it. Certainly our three leads are much less exciting than all the B players.
Well, that's just it. I never really gave much of a damn about Rick and Ilsa Lind and of Laszlo Kovacs. Is it Laszlo Kovacs?
No, it's Laszlo's is Gregor Laszlo? I forget.
Pierre Laszlo?
It's Laszlo's his last name.
Yes, Laszlo Kovacs is a cinematographer whose name I just pulled out of thin air.
He's in the next segment.
Yeah. The thing about Casablanca is what's great about Casablanca is everything that's happening around the main story.
Yeah.
And particularly because you don't get that much Sidney Greenstreet, far less than you were led to believe, and that's doubly the case with Peter Lorre, who I thought was a big part of Casablanca when I saw it. And as he's being dragged away off camera, you realize, he's not coming back.
Yeah, spoiler alert, he doesn't last long in this movie.
No, but all the stuff with those two, and especially Claude Rains as Captain Renault, who is just fantastic and chewing the scenery in every single scene that he's in. He is playing the movie like the movie is a birthday party for him.
Yes, it's his movie, and who cares about what else is going on?
Yeah, and it's funny because some actors have fun and they make movies of varying quality fun by being in it, but most of the time they don't realize the good that they're doing. But Claude Rains seems to have excess knowledge, just knowledge from outside the situation, where he's like, oh no, I'm the star of this movie and no one else knows.
And he's playing like a creepy character, which they're not allowed to forefront because he's basically sexually assaulting all sorts of women in order to give them favors, because he's head of Casablanca, basically. And there are a few scenes where this is really underlined as much as they can in a Code era film. But basically, he's flirting with everyone the whole time, and it's great.
Yeah, you get the sense that Claude Rains, or maybe Claude Rains, but Renault is a pansexual imp.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting character. Did you prefer the fat guy, so to speak, in Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, or Ferrari, the fat guy who is the forger who eventually ends up getting Rick's place I guess. Which performance did you like better?
Who's fat shall reign supreme? Well, there's no knock in Sidney Greenstreet. Sidney Greenstreet is great, and he makes a huge impression despite not being in Casablanca very much, whereas Fat Man is front and center of Overdrawn at the Memory Bank. Though that guy is also clearly having a good time.
Is he? I don't know.
I think he is.
I mean, I think he's glad to get the work.
Like him, he seems to take a great deal of relish of saying, of several times he has recorded saying, "Fingal, you are mine."
All right. That's true. He does make the most of the word fingal.
Yeah. Like you get the sense that with the character who I'm not even sure if he has a name. It is just Fat Man or Chairman or President. And that's kind of whatever he's referred to as. But you get the sense that it's like, oh, this actor has not played villains very much and has been waiting for the chance.
Well, so we also watched another film because if you're thinking about films that are inspired by Casablanca, of course you think, well, Casablanca, and of course you think about Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, but of course you think about another perennial favorite, totally based on Casablanca, obviously based on Casablanca, which is, of course, Barbed Wire.
Yes, and the reason I rented it when I was 13 years old is because I was a huge fan of Casablanca and no other reason.
Yes, exactly. That's why you made sure to get the uncut so you could have all the references there.
Yeah, I knew that they were going to make Casablanca subtext text, and I thought that, well, the unrated version is going to be true to the source material. I wanted that. That's why I was also such a big fan and so eager to see the Charles Bronson remake of Casablanca, Cabo Blanco,
which unfortunately we didn't quite have time to watch.
Nope.
But so how do you think Barbed Wire stands up?
I gotta say that if you're going to watch one version of Casablanca, please make it Barbed Wire and make it a blockbuster night.
Absolutely. Oh man, I feel like I've watched Barbed Wire more often than I've watched most other films. It's possibly in the top 5 in terms of frequency I've watched it at this point, not counting films that were missed it or whatever.
Right. Yeah, but Barbed Wire, it is wall-to-wall entertainment, and it is something really special in that you have, in much the same way Overdrawn on the Memory Bank is, where you have this kind of unspecified future, but it looks like an 80s infomercial. There is something so great about the fact that you see inside the Rick of Barbed Wire's bar, and you see the musical acts that they hire, and they all basically look like the band Garbage. It's like, oh, it's still 95, even though it's 2017, the worst year of our lives.
Yes. Oh, man. I'm also thinking about how you were talking about how all the sort of B characters in Casablanca are the most exciting. And there's something to that in Barbed Wire as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Where you've got a lot of minor characters who are really punching above their weight. And frankly, the big fatso in that movie is the best of the 3 by far.
And we're not being cruel. The character's literally named Big Fatso.
Oh, he's so good.
They carry him around in a bulldozer, and he is just eating chicken and laughing. And I've not found a more relatable character. If I was going to be in the post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland or Mad Max world, that's who I would most want to be.
But it also suffers from having, much like Casablanca, these dreary, earnest characters who are the resistance fighters, Alex and
Cora D.
Cora D. I wanted to call her Cardi B for a second, but that's not right. But yeah, and they're just sort of, they're there. She's fine.
She's a much better actor than the freedom fighter.
Yeah, he's just
the Ilsa of Barbed Wire.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, he's kind of boring, and I feel like that's part of the formula. Like that's part of the homage.
I guess so. It's like let's get the worst performances front and center, and let's pepper it up. Let's spice up this gumbo with a scene-stealing performance from Xander Berkeley. Who seems to be like half riffing on the movie as he's in it, which is actually really, really charming. He's great. Noted that guy and weird face haver Clint Howard shows up in a role that you got the sense that Steve Buscemi turned down. And it's everything that's happening in Barbed Wire is fun. And I guess much like Casablanca in that you'll get a certain chuckle out of some of Rick's lines and enjoy his world weariness. There is something that's so great about the burlesque show affect of one Pamela Anderson Lee at the time, I think.
Yes.
When she utters the immortal line, "Don't call me babe."
Ever seen Batman?
That's her Christian Bale Batman voice, essentially.
So good.
I just love the fact that she delivers every single line like she's on codeine.
So in short, go watch Barbed Wire if you
Yes.
haven't already. And if you haven't already, shame on you.
If one movie was going to kill Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, I'm glad it was Barbed Wire.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. 13 bright neon facts about Overdrawn at the memory bank. Go, Adam, go!
Hi, my name is Adam, and I'd like to offer you a micro scorner. John Tucker provided the music for Overdrawn, and while I've never heard of him and he doesn't have a massive filmography, he did the music for a few episodes of the 1980s Twilight Zone, so, it's pretty cool.
The director, Douglas Williams, also directed a few episodes of Fraggle Rock, which is also cool. His last credit is the 2007 documentary Hitler's Canadians, about the 40,000 German prisoners of war that were transported to and detained in Canada during World War II. Huh.
That's right. Overdrawn at the Memory Bank is a part of our heritage. Although Pearl mentions PBS affiliate WNET, they co-produced Overdrawn with Canada's RSL Productions, and the movie was filmed in Toronto. Also, Fraggle Rock was filmed in Canada, mostly. It's complicated.
So let's keep the CanCon going. Louis Negin, I don't know how to say that, our Peter Lorre wannabe, was born in Britain, but he has done a lot of work with beloved Canadian iconoclastic director Guy Maddin on films such as the excellent My Winnipeg and Sissy Boy Slap Party.
Linda Griffiths, who plays Apollonia James, was also known for writing and starring in Maggie and Pierre, a one-woman play in which she played both Margaret Trudeau and her husband, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. Maximum CanCon.
At one point in the film, we learn that our hero, Aram Fingal, studied at Bosniewash Central. Get it? Boston, New York, Washington, Bosniewash? It's a common sci-fi trope that in the future the northeastern United States will become so urbanized that the region will agglomerate into one massive megapolis, but as someone who grew up in Bosniewash, I am just not sure.
When Fingal learns to hack into the computer and change the weather, the background infographic suggests the results are a bit more severe than some snow flurries inside a mall. Tornadoes devastate Europe, they say. Damage claims, 250 million. Is that dollars or credits of damage? Or a 250 million people dead? Fingal, you monster!
Pearl opens the episode with a PBS-style telethon, and her only phone bank employee is Ortega.
Hi, what's your name? Ortega? That's pretty.
Ortega, played by Paul Chaplin, is straight out of the incredibly strange creatures who stopped living and became mixed-up zombies listed earlier in Season 8. He's a henchman, he doesn't speak, he's perfect for a phone bank.
The version of the theme song that introduces the public Pearl television segments
Stand by.
is recycled from the Mystery Science Theater Hour. What's that, a few of you ask? Back in 1993, around the time Mike had taken over the show, Comedy Central wondered if they could have more of their hit show MST3K in their lineup, but without it taking up a massive 2-hour block.
So they picked 30 episodes, all Joel episodes from seasons 3 to 5, and chopped them in half. Mike dressed up as Jack Perkins, the gentle and erudite host of A&E's Biography, to introduce the episode, or if it was the second half of an episode, to provide a recap of the story so far.
A few years later, MST3K went into syndication, and that's right, for a brief time you could catch MST3K on all sorts of local channels. Stations were given the option of showing the full episodes or airing these hour-long versions. It's unclear which version was more popular.
Personally, I found the Mystery Science Theater Hour to be a weird and unsatisfying viewing experience. I would watch the opening segment to see the new Perkins material, but why would I start watching It Conquered the World, knowing it would cut off halfway through, especially when I had the whole episode taped? But the new segments were nice.
We've had a lot of requests for us to cover the Mystery Science Theater Hour. A lot. We might do an in-depth episode on them someday, but let's hope this satisfies your lust for Mystery Science Theater Hour info for now.
And that's time! Well, I hope by now all of our listeners have had a chance to give and give generously at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow, because we couldn't make quality episodes like this one, or, whatever one was your favorite, without you.
Also, we have Fred Rogers in the studio standing by, waiting for your call. It's a skeleton I put in a red sweater.
He's still the sweetest skeleton you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
So PBS was a big part of our lives when I was growing up in New York City. And we had several PBS channels to choose from, which meant that we had several competing telethons at various points, including WNET, which was one of the producers of this movie. Did you get any of that action? I know you sometimes got strange American channels up in Newfoundland.
Yes, PBS was one of them.
And did you ever call in and get a tote bag?
I was never tempted to call in because I knew that others would do the work for me. The only way I would have called in to break my piggy bank and donate dollars to PBS would be if they were absolutely desperate and threatening. If they were saying, because they always say it so nicely, it's like, oh, we can't provide you with these programs. We can't provide you with these programs if you stop giving. But I thought that if they got aggressive and said, we will stop airing these unless you give us money, then I might have to fork over a bunch of toonies and loonies to make sure that I get more episodes of Red Dwarf.
Well, they did threaten that sometimes, as I recall, especially sort of later on. I seem to remember that there were some threats of taking away Sesame Street.
Oh, wow.
Because Sesame Street was incredibly expensive for PBS to run. And of course, it's a staple of PBS station programming. So what are you going to do? Mm. And we've seen where that's ended up, where new episodes of Sesame Street, I believe, are now shown on HBO first. And then 6 months or a year later, they're shown on PBS, which is weird. Mm. But so it goes. In my house, obviously, I didn't, because I wasn't in control of the purse strings of the house. But my mother would often give to PBS and enjoyed getting the tote bag.
Ooh. So you were the only kid on your block with a ghostwriter tote bag.
I think all the tote bags were of the station.
Oh.
Like it would say WLIW or WNET on it with a nice sunset or whatever.
Did it have the PBS weird face logo?
I think you could get that one.
That one I would take.
Yeah. And in retrospect, that seems, it was going through a phase where that logo didn't seem graphically interesting, which of course 10, 15 years before 1990, whatever, it did. And now it seems great. Mm-hmm. But there was a period where it felt a bit stale and awkward shaped.
Oh,
that's how graphic design goes.
So you commit to something and wait for it to be good again without any change.
Exactly. But yeah, in general, are you a big fan of tote bags?
I used to be, weirdly enough, although I would never classify myself as such a person, a tote bag enthusiast. But there was a time in which I seemingly got one from everywhere. Like when artist Kate Beaton from the wilds of Canada had a tote bag of a wonderfully messily drawn cat that she had designed. I had to get it. And so I got it and I was like, oh, this will be perfect for books and notebooks. And I used it for that. When I went to the Morbid Anatomy Museum in Brooklyn, they had a tote bag and I said, I must have it. And I would do that with several things. So I've gone through a lot of tote bags for someone who admittedly does not care.
See, do you use the tote bags? You said you use them for your books and notebooks.
I would use them frequently, yeah. So I use them a lot, basically throughout my 20s and up to my early 30s. And then my last tote bag is not looking so good, so I've taken him out of rotation.
Oh, I have a lot of tote bags. We've collected a lot of tote bags over the years. I really like the concept of tote bags. I never use them unless I have something very specific and tote bag shaped. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm pretty sure it's not going to rain because tote bags offer no protection from the elements.
As I have learned time and again.
Yeah. So I don't know. They're kind of ridiculous. I kind of always just go back to using my backpack, but I just love what they look like. I love it as a graphic design space. My other podcast, The Spouter Inn, has a great pink tote bag that I love when I have opportunities to bring it out there. But I don't use it every day.
Yeah, and it's funny, I wonder if there's enough of a market for people to listen to two grown men talk about tote bags.
I think we
could have a podcast.
Yeah, we could spin this out to another podcast. Have you come up with a name yet?
Totes.
Totes?
Yeah, just totes with a big exclamation mark.
Oh.
And one of those jazz backgrounds.
Oh, boy. So on the other side of things, there's a lot of media that ask for money the way that PBS does. That asks for your membership, your support, even though it's voluntary, but it's still needed to keep going. Do you support a lot of media like that? Do you support any Patreons, or have you in the past?
Yeah, I've supported folks in the past where I am a student right now. I have had to say, sorry.
Yeah, fair enough.
No money for you.
And they understand that, generally speaking.
But not before I get that tote bag.
I support a handful of other podcast networks and other podcasts that are independent and so forth, and a few other types of creators. And it's great. It's great to get the behind the scenes stuff. It's great to feel like you're helping them out. It's great to think about how much of your day and how much of your life has been spent hanging out with these people virtually, and that you get to help them out with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I was in a position where I could.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. That's all right. But anyway, I'm sure our listeners can connect the dots here.
Mm-hmm. And hey, in addition to ways to support the show, if you were to hypothetically support a show and you didn't necessarily, you wanted something instead of just giving away your money like a sucker, why it'd be great if we had a store available, Chris, that had merchandise.
It sure would. Boy, if only it's just a show.com/store led to a place where you could get all sorts of good things from It's Just a Show and all the other fine megaphonic podcasts. I wonder if that works.
There's only one way to find out. Listener, you have your phone or your computer near you. Try this and you'll never regret it. You'll interface with merchandise.
To be fair, if you're not in a position where you can give money, of course, just talking about us to other cool people, even if they don't like MST3K, maybe they'd like one of our other fancy podcasts. Maybe they read books or watch horror movies in particular. That would be very handy for either of us.
All those things are very possible. However, just to reiterate, if you do have a few spare dollars rooting around, or even if you don't, you know what? Don't treat your kids to pizza this week. Buy a shirt. The only thing that I guess we're missing as we covered all this, and I suppose we should be grateful, is that at no point was this recording interrupted by some sort of filthy anteater.
Well, I have one last thing to say about anteaters. Because as everybody knows about this episode who's seen it, there's a weird slam on anteaters in it. And there's several weird slams on anteaters throughout it. And Mike and the bots get indignant about how the anteaters are treated in this film. I mean, there's no actual anteaters in the film, but the way that they're talked about as being a thing you wouldn't want to be inside of.
I got 47 credits. What kind of a double do you think that buys?
An anteater? Maybe.
Whoa, huge slam on anteaters out of nowhere.
And doesn't that disobey the rule of Chekhov's anteater?
Exactly. So I bet many people were expecting us to do a segment about anteaters because it's an interesting animal and, when else are we going to get to talk about them?
Finally.
Exactly. Finally our chance to talk about the fascinating anteater. Well, it turns out that I did some research for a potential segment on anteaters, and anteaters are boring.
Yay!
We'll link to some fun fact pages about fun facts about fun facty anteaters, but oh my word, there is nothing interesting in those facts to spin a story around. They eat ants. They don't like people. I think we can all agree with that. They don't have teeth. And so I think the term is edentulous, and they like to throw that word around so that you can increase your vocabulary, and maybe it'll show up in a crossword puzzle someday. Yeah. But no, anteaters, super boring.
Yeah, and all links in our show notes are just going to link back to our store. If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you want to support It's Just a Show, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at @ItIsJustAShow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you. For as little as $1 per episode, you can help us research and record this show, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/64.
Well, Adam, I'm tired of knowing everything. What are we going to be doing next episode?
Well, the most logical follow-up to a film about computers and about hacking and about Casablanca would be two episodes of a TV show stitched together to form a movie. They have roughly the same production values because you and I will be watching Season 3, Episode 22, Master Ninja.
Part 1.
I hope. Is there more? Who knows?
Oh, Master Ninja. This is the Lee Van Cleef vehicle with the other guy.
Yes,
One
Timothy
who's-
Van Patten.
Timothy Van Patten. Yes, I was like, he's the 8 is enough dad kid thing. We don't think of him as the Master Ninja kid because he's not memorable.
No. We'd think of him as part of the rich Van Patten dynasty.
Yes. I haven't watched this episode in ages.
I see it every once in a while. I remember it being quite fun, and unless I'm getting my episodes of Master Ninja, aka the Master, confused, this is the one with Demi Moore in the first half.
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And therefore it's the one where Joel opens an umbrella to cover up her boobs.
No, you're thinking of City Limits, because there would be no boobs on an NBC show.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. But it's either the one with Demi Moore at the beginning or it's the one with George Lazenby at the end, unless those are both the same episode.
There's like a hamster, right?
Yes, there is a hamster because, as all ninjas, Lee Van Cleef loves hamsters.
So, look forward to a 10-minute segment on hamster care.
Yeah, Lee Van Cleef was the Richard Gere of his time.
Oh, come on. That was cheap.
Well, again, if you want this show to be less cheap, please feel free to donate. And it's just a show.com/Patreon or patreon.com/it's just a show.
If you do it, you get to hang out with us in our members-only Slack where we make Richard Gere jokes and talk about Middlemarch.
Yes, that's because we're geared toward our audience.
Oh, boy. So it's been really fun doing this episode at the table with you. And I hope we get a chance to do it again sometime.
I think all things are possible.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, ever since I saw the end of Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, where a simple man can become interfaced with his own fantasy version of himself as Humphrey Bogart, and he can make essentially dentist commercial graphics show up on hard surfaces. I really do think that anything is possible.
All right. Well, until next time.
Please don't press Control-Alt-Delete on this podcast.
And prepare for snow in the Nirvana Mall. Take it away, Theme Squad.
This concludes our broadcast day on Channel 13 WNET, owned and operated by the Educational Broadcasting Corporation, assigned to Newark, New Jersey, and serving the tri-state metropolitan area.